Welcome back to the Linux version of the news. And like we did last week, we're just going to cover one primary story. And that last week's that seemed to got a lot of positive feedback. So we're going to try this out for a little bit. So today's story is Manjaro joins the dark side. Yes, they are going to introduce opt-out telemetry. And what they are going to also do is potentially install this opt-out and telemetry on you without really any consent during just a random update at some point in time. Because, hey, it's kind of based on Arch and it just kind of rolls, right? So they have this new application called Manjaro Data Donor. And this is collecting basic system information. So we're going to actually look at the forum posts as well, but just to give you an idea of what's going on. So obviously Linux distributions, among everything else in the world, is like how many people are using our system? Very fair question to ask, and there's ways to do that right. There's ways to do that wrong. There's things like network pings. That's actually what Manjaro does now. They'll get a network ping. They keep the IP address for a short period of time. And it does a fair job at identifying, at least how many Manjaro systems are turned on at any given time. That in itself could be problematic without an easy way to disable it. And obviously, there's other things out there to collect data as well. Linux Mint. The only amount of data Linux Mint collects is based on the default Linux Mint start landing page on the web browser. So if you never boot up Firefox or go to that page, then you will never be supplying any information. And even that is limited to some basic things the web browser could provide. And so that's not as problematic. There's other things as well. We'll get into what some other groups are doing also, but let's go ahead and have a brief look at what this is. It's very, very much like Ubuntu's data collection, only it's worse because it's a continuous collection, whereas Ubuntu does it once on install. Again, we're going to get into that in a minute. But previously, it relied on a ping via the network manager at ping.manjaro.org to estimate the number of users, but it had inaccurate counting. There were privacy concerns. The data organization, which is out of Germany, claimed to mask IP addresses. However, they did still have to have IP addresses for a period of time, and then they had unsuitable tooling. Basically, it was designed for website analytics, not anything relating to a system. And so what they did is they created this new application, which is Manjaro Data Donor. And it's not Manjaro Data Donor. It's Manjaro Data Thievery. You're not donating it. It is being extracted from you in an opt-out fashion, meaning it is turned on as soon as you install it or update and happen to get this package installed on your system. It is now working. It is also adding itself a systemd service to continuously work, sort of like a cron, and it's going to give information. Now, there's been some discussion on the forum. We're going to look at that about GDPR. The problem is nothing they collect qualifies at least under direct GDPR personal data, so it probably does not violate GDPR. One of the big challenges with them is, again, at least there's a couple of sane people, not many. Most people over there on the forum are lemmings. They're just, oh, you want our data? Okay. And they don't stop and think about this. The majority of people who switch to Linux are sick of the data nonsense going on in every type of service or company out there. But here's what the data collects. It is collecting there's some basic metadata, version 1. I think that's the version of the application. The timestamp, the device ID, the distribution, the release, and INX, I believe, is related to monitor information, resolution, stuff like that. So the system, it gives you the kernel name, the form factor of the computer, so it's a laptop or a desktop, what's the install date, what's the product name of the computer, what's the product family, what's the sys vendor, and what's the board name. Now, the biggest challenge with a lot of this stuff is that this can be used to fingerprint people, and if you're a journalist or something in a high-risk situation, this can be used to identify you. Here's your boot. Are you booting UEFI? How long has your system been up? What's your CPU? So here's your architecture. You have the model of it. You have the cores, the threads. How much RAM do you have? How much swap do you have? What type of graphics do you have? Drivers and information about the GPU. What are your various outputs? So your monitor, your refresh rate, your screen resolution. Are you using Pipewire or Pulse Audio? Is it activated? How many disks do you have? What size? What type of file system? Is it encrypted? Let's see. What's your locality? So your region. This is the one that could get them into GDPR problems. And then packages. When's your last update? What's your branch? How many packages do you have? How many foreign packages? That means how many applications did you add that are not installed by Manjaro by default? Do you have any Flatpaks running? Do you have any updated pending updates? How many Pac-Man mirrors do you have? What country are these configured in? Tell us about your desktop. What command line are you using? What's your desktop environment? What's your login manager? What's your window manager? What's your Wayland type? And how are you displaying with? So all that information. Now, people look at it like, oh, well, you're just collecting system information. Understand this. That is the information that Windows was extracting from my system in a way I could not opt, that got me to never use Windows again. And this is opt out. Now, one step better than Windows, I can turn this off. We don't have information about how we can turn it off yet. There's apparently not yet a simple setting, although some people are saying you should make it opt-in instead of opt-out. It should be part of the welcome package, and inside of the settings, you should have the option to disable it. The challenge is that on being asked about what, why is this opt out instead of opt in? They said, well, it's just, won't get enough data if we do it opt in. Very few people are going to give that data up. Yeah, that's precisely the point. People don't want it. And the majority of data you collect are from people that don't even know that you're transmitting such data, because they don't necessarily watch this program a lot. They're just like, you know what? I'm sick of Windows collecting all my data. I'm just going to install Linux. Oh, I've heard about that. I've heard this Manjaro word. Let's just go ahead and install that and see what that's doing. And so that really is the issue. So here is the actual forum post. Is it from Romang? So he says he's been working on Manjaro data donor, and it's a way to collect statistics. You can install it already if you want. It's not installed by default now, but you can set it up, and that way you can collect the data. And of course, a bunch of lemmings go jumping off the cliff following after. Wow, it's amazing. We can give all this data up to you. And it's actually not until this guy here says, appreciate the kind of transparency. So if you're reading the release note information or forums or things like that, they are at least transparent about it. He says, I'm curious how the opt-out will be implemented if that's been determined. Realize making it too easy to opt out will potentially skew data too much. So in other words, we don't want to make it easy to opt out either. Realizing that making it too easy to opt out will potentially skew data, while making it hidden or difficult to opt out will potentially trigger privacy-concerned people. You've triggered me by adding it into the system already. I'm sorry, I'm triggered. I mean, you may as well throw a trigger warning on the top of this video. Trigger warning, Switch to Linux is warning you, if Manjaro goes through with this, stop using Manjaro. It is no longer a viable system. Stop it. Just stop it. No. This is the mindset that they're trying to cram everybody into. Be like, oh, everybody, just be expected. Everybody's going to collect every bit of data on everybody at all times. No, piss off. It's my data. You can't have it. And if we just have to say, stop using Manjaro because we've switched to Linux because we don't want this crap to be collected, and you certainly should not be collecting this scope of data on an opt-out system, because this allows you to be fingerprinted. It allows you to be identified. It allows you to give up specific information about who you are, whether or not it violates GDPR or not. Now, I don't think it does violate GDPR. That's not in every bit of data. That's personal data, which is clearly defined in the GDPR laws. Like I said, the only one that might qualify is the locale data. So this guy is, he says, fine with it. Source available, preview of data, public website for statistics, clear communication. There is a public data for statistics, which Linux Mint has one of those as well. Let's see. So this guy says, I'm curious how the opt-out was implemented. You mean opt-in? I sent data and looked at it beforehand. The way it collects monitors, refresh rates is unreliable. You can see also on the website, almost a third of people did not send refresh rates. So they did mention there's something wrong with the system. It can't do screen resolutions very well. And now we start getting into discussions with people going, I kind of don't really like this, the way this is implemented. This guy says it's INXI on Wayland doesn't work. What a shocker. A program that doesn't work on Wayland. Color me surprised. All right. Look into an hour ago. I'm not trying to get the Wayland info data. So basically, if you're not on X, you're getting unreliable refresh information. Scroll down. There's just discussing how to get all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until we got down here. I think this is the one here. So sending hardware data with MDD will be opt out because I believe if you do opt in, the data you gather will be so heavily skewed you can just leave it be. So this is a post from the original person saying, hey, it's opt out because we want the data. And if it's opt in, we're only going to get data from a few people. So Aragorn says, well, I understand your vantage. I firmly believe it should be opt in rather than opt out, even if only for ethical reasons. Furthermore, having any kind of telemetry enabled by default and opt-out is, as you noted, a very contentious affair in this day and age, especially in light of big tech companies like Google, Canonical, Meta, Facebook, and even Mozilla resorting to telemetry that is either opt-out or doesn't even allow for opting out. We've already had quite a few issues here at the forum over the past 5 years with members who wrongfully suspected we already had telemetry enabled because of the ping. And from this experience, I firmly believe having it enabled by default, even if only on new installs, not to mention pushing it onto existing installations via an update, will come around to bite us in the hindsight quite quickly and quite ferociously. I mean, just remember what happened when Manjaro wanted to include, was it SoftMaker Office, which is not privacy respecting software. And they got a massive backlash that now at least we have the ability to say no Office, this one, or LibreOffice. If anything, then past experience have demonstrated it doesn't take a whole lot. As a matter of fact, a storm in a teacup is already enough for Manjaro users to jump ship in droves and leave Manjaro for Arch proper, EndeavourOS, Garuda, or similar distributions. I think this issue is worth serious contemplation, especially so because Phylum gave members his word that any upcoming telemetry features in Manjaro would be opt-in only, which is how KDE does it, by the way. So, in other words, somebody had promised any upcoming telemetry would be opt-in, but they didn't do that. They're like, nope, this is going to be opt-out. So now we actually get people questioning things, and then we get some GDPR and things. This guy says down here, I don't think it's a choice. It should be opt-in. You don't collect data about users in Europe without consent. This gets into the GDPR part, which may or may not actually be valid or not, because you're not collecting IP addresses per se. They are saying that their new system does a better job at scrubbing IP addresses. I don't know. So there is definitely some issue going on here. Manjaro needs to consider these things, especially since most people are running Linux because they're concerned about privacy. Now, this did make me think about what do other things do. Obviously, a lot of distributions will do a connectivity ping. Sometimes that just checks if the network is working. Sometimes that is actually collecting data. Linux Mint has one of those that just checks if the network is working and alerts you if the network stops working. That's what that's for. Now, Ubuntu. Remember, Ubuntu had the controversial data collection. They're collecting a similar report, only they're only doing it once. They're not doing it on apparently a routine, regular basis, like this Manjaro data donor is doing. Effectively, Manjaro data donor is creating a table of fingerprinted computers and then seeing how your computer changes over time. And if you're talking about certain applications or things like that, you can de-anonymize the person quite similarly. Linux Mint, they do collect data just based only on the start web page. If you start Firefox in a new Linux Mint install without the internet connectivity, you change the default landing page, you shut Firefox down, turn the internet back on, and start Firefox, Linux Mint will never have a record of what you do, and nothing in the distribution itself does any data collection. So that's how that works. Debian has the PopCon, which doesn't do telemetry on the system, but what it does do is it will rank the packages you have installed and use on a regular basis. That is not even installed unless you explicitly install it. It is opt-in on the installer itself for Debian. So I'm not saying all data collection is necessarily horrible, but the problem is that Linux is an area that the vast majority of people on Linux are here for the privacy factors. When you start adding opt-out telemetry into the system, you start raising some serious concerns. Now, there are certainly a subset of people that are on Linux because, you know, they're developers or some form and they like that kind of stuff. And, you know, the guys that are doing things like this are among that group. They're like, oh, this is cool. Man, I just really need to know a lot more information about who's using it and things like that. You know what? Don't bother, okay? You're going to have a lot better time not worrying about who's using your system, and spend some time on the forum where if people have a problem, they'll post the information willingly to get some resolution done. That's what you need to do. You just need to watch your forums. It's the same crap with Apple. I've talked about this 5 years ago. Apple's like, well, we need to figure out what's going on and send crash reports and crap like that. No, you don't. You need to hire one employee to watch your damn forum. That's all you need to do. Watch your damn forum. You'll get all the user information you need out of that. You'll see the problems that come up, and those people, as they're getting the resolution, will give you the system information they're comfortable sharing. In fact, you'll probably get more information than this is going to collect, and that's the circumstance by which you need to do it. Manjaro, please do not implode on yourself. We need you around. You are a good distribution. You look beautiful. You have wonderful things. You have great ideas. Please don't kill yourself by doing something so stupid as adding opt-out telemetry into your system, because I will never recommend you again if you go through this plan. This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. That's all I have to say. Hopefully they take that to heart, because I want Manjaro around. I'm not hating on Manjaro. I want them around, but I cannot recommend them in good conscience to this channel if they're adding opt-out telemetry into their system. With that, if you want to help support the channel, we are over on Patreon, patreon.com/TOMM, especially if you're running those ad blockers and you still want to help support rather than turning it on and dealing with the barrage. Hey, you could go on to Patreon and give us as little as $1 a month over there. We do have locals and Subscribe Star as well. You can check those out, but patreon.com/TOMM. Of course, we will get the short stories over there. You can also pick up those books as well if you want to do that over on Patreon. With that, thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.